Wells Fargo is making changes to make things right. First, all customers who have been impacted will be fully refunded. Second,
you're probably thinking to yourself, holy shit, how did we get here? That's a good question. Let us rewind all the way back to the very beginning and see how this shitstorm was created.
This entire situation began with higher administration positions in the Wells Fargo company essentially instructing branch managers and lower-end employees with making quotas by opening accounts that weren't necessarily authorized to begin with. You can even see this situation occurring right now between a branch manager and his employee. The branch manager is essentially instructing this employee to continually open accounts for various clients and customers of Wells Fargo, so that way they can ultimately make a net profit from these open accounts without the authorization. You can see some of the employees were very hesitant and even a little bit reluctant to even follow the orders of their branch manager because they knew from their personal set that it was unethical, it was immoral, and it was not something they should be doing, regardless of what their upper administration is telling them to do.
We need these quotas now. Not tomorrow, not 2 weeks from now, now.
But the customers, they don't...
I don't care about the customers. Money.
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 Overall, in this case, there were many people involved. The main person would be John Stumpf, which was the CEO behind the whole incident that happened. Next in line would be Carrie Tolstead, who was the person in charge of the unit that opened up all the fake accounts. Overall, there was close to 5,300 employees fired who were involved in this case, and some were even rehired back, which is a significant amount for a company that employs over 300,000 people. When it comes to the victims, there's 3.5 million fake accounts opened, which means there was close to 3.5 million victims. And there was also 800,000 people who were affected by getting charged for car insurance they did not need.
The seriousness of Wells Fargo's crimes should not be understated. Their aggressive sales culture robbed millions of customers of their money, dignity, trust, and sense of financial security. Some were severely affected by the scam, particularly those signed up for car insurance plans who had their cars repossessed, and those whose credit scores were damaged by fraudulent accounts opened in their names.
What's scary to remember is that a lot of Wells Fargo customers and clients did not even know many of these accounts were open without their authorization until at some point later down the line. For example, many of them would often open their applications for the Wells Fargo company, or they would even log on to the website domain for Wells Fargo and finally discovered that they had an account that they didn't necessarily authorize to be opened. Upon further investigation, whether they be calling the Wells Fargo hotline or visiting a local Wells Fargo nearby, they were often met with no real answers for their questions and left with more questions about why this account was even open to begin with.
I said you wanted the savings account and I opened the savings account. I don't know what else to tell you, ma'am. I want you to take it out because I didn't know that you were going to open it. I mean, I could do that, but it's going to take 48 hours.
It was the norm to just open sales unethically. It was just what we were taught.
The cutthroat corporate culture, perpetuated by then CEO John Stumpf, put enormous pressure on bank employees to meet nearly impossible quotas and often unreasonable demands from their managers. Stumpf's mantra of 8 is great, meaning that each customer should possess at least 8 Wells Fargo products, was drilled into the minds of employees. With sales goals as high as 20 products a day and many employees citing shaming tactics, threats of termination, panic attacks, and upset stomachs, it's no wonder so many employees cracked under the pressure. Wells Fargo had financial sanctions placed upon it by California State Treasurer John Chung. These included suspending investments by the Treasurer's Office in Wells Fargo Securities, barring use of Wells Fargo as a broker-dealer for the purchase of investments, and suspension of Wells Fargo as a managing underwriter for bond sales in which the Treasurer appoints the underwriter. Chung's sanctions were put into place in September of 2016, but he extended them for another year in October 2017 in light of new disclosures about the bank's bad practices.
Wells Fargo CEO John Stumpf endured a heavy round of questioning and answering by various senators, including Senator Elizabeth Warren from the state of Massachusetts, trying to decide and figure out what officially went on with the whole Wells Fargo fraud case. In the appearance before the Senate, the head of the embattled bank faced blistering criticism for a scandal in which the bank employees, in an effort to meet sales goals, enrolled millions of customers into programs without their approval. You can often see the former CEO, Stumpf, sort of struggling to even answer the even most easiest of questions from the senators and provide some form of background for what actually went on behind the scenes at these meetings.
So, Mr. Stumpf, is it true that Wells Fargo has just been opening accounts for these clients without necessarily their authorization or their permission for months on end?
Yeah, but
In September of 2016, Wells Fargo was fined $185 million by regulators as a result of opening the fraudulent accounts, including $100 million from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, $35 million from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and $50 million from the City and County of Los Angeles. The bank was also hit with several lawsuits. As a result of a national class action settlement, Wells Fargo agreed to compensate customers $142 million.
Mr. Stumpf, do you believe your motto of 8 is great is encouraging your employees to open these fraudulent accounts?
And remember, guys, 8 is great. 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 No, it's a really great business tactic. It really is.
The best theory that can explain this crime is Agnew's general strain theory, which states the crime is an adaptation of stress and frustration in a variety of forms. Here, the crime happened in reaction to confronting or expecting to confront negative stimuli. The employees at Wells Fargo were pressured into opening fake accounts because they were afraid of losing their jobs, and their managers would yell at them if they didn't open enough accounts. This meant that their crimes were done to avoid these things from happening, just like general strain theory states.
After the scandal came to light, about 5,300 employees were fired from Wells Fargo. Many of these employees filed cases against the bank for wrongful terminations, demotions, and unpaid wages. One class action suit seeks $7.2 billion in compensation for employees.
So, Mr. Stumpf, when did you think it would be a good idea to start opening fraudulent accounts?
Look, that never happened. Okay, well it did, but, you know.
Hundreds of thousands of consumers were heavily hit by the opening of the fraudulent accounts. Of the 3.5 million unauthorized accounts thought to be opened between 2009 and 2016, 190,000 of them incurred fees and charges. It's also believed that 528,000 customers were signed up for online bill payment without authorization, and another 570,000 customers were signed up and billed for car insurance without their knowledge. In about 20,000 of these cases, customers had their cars repossessed. Collateral damage in the form of lowered credit scores continues to hit customers hard. Goldman Sachs estimated that those affected may have had to pay an additional $50 million to borrow money because of their diminished credit scores. Lower credit scores can make it harder to obtain loans, mortgages, or even jobs. The emotional stress of financial harm and such a gross breach of trust involving an institution responsible for millions of people's money should also not be underestimated.
Wells Fargo is making changes to make things right. First, all customers who have been impacted will be fully refunded. Second, a confirmation will be sent when new personal or small business checking, savings, or credit card accounts are opened. Third, we've eliminated product sales goals for our retail bankers to ensure your interests are put first. We're taking action. We're renewing our commitment to you.
Oh, shawty, I don't mind when you work until 3. If you're leaving with me, gon' make that money, money, money. Your money, money, money. Cause I know how it is. Gon' handle your...
And remember, keep it sexy.